Hey everybody, welcome to Hump Day Hangouts. Today is the first day of June 2022, and we are rolling strong. I think we are on episode 394, I believe, this week. Man, cruising right along. So we're going to do our hellos, do some intros, do some of that stuff. Before we jump into the questions, we got a couple of announcements for everyone and all that sort of good stuff. A couple of reminders as well. I wanted to touch on something based on the webinar that Jesper and Bradley had last week before Memorial Day weekend, talking about yacss. And if you have not checked that out yet, definitely go watch that. I'll put the link back on the Hump Day Hangouts page here. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, you could just look through our channel or search for yacss, Y-A-C-S-S, and maybe semantic mastery, and check that out. So got a lot of really good feedback on that. People have really enjoyed that, learned a lot, and checking out how to use that tool. So some really good stuff going on there. Also wanted to say thanks to all the people who have just joined the mastermind over the past week. Glad to have you in there. Had many members joining over the past week, taking advantage of our early notification of the change to the quarterly plan. So still definitely will be worth it, but prices went up as of midnight yesterday, and a lot of people who had been thinking about joining went ahead and hopped in, and so happy to have them in the mastermind now and getting started with them and onboarding and all that sort of good stuff. So with that said, Chris, how you doing today?
Good. Super glad to be here. Exciting times as usual. Yeah, summer's here. Can't complain. Good weather. So yeah, things are pretty good here at the moment.
Nice. Bradley, how about yourself? How you doing today?
Man, I'm peachy.
Peachy.
I had we had a call earlier today with Trent from Flowster, and I've just been doing a ton of SOPs for my directory agency, kind of the whole model for using a directory site for prospecting and sales, and it's just an incredible process. It works really, really well. Anyways, I spent over 50 hours last week alone on developing those SOPs, because we're talking about like condensing a year and a half worth of developing this method into an SOP. So anyways, I've spent just an enormous amount of time. My eyes feel crossed because I've been building these SOPs for the last like 10 days. And I've still got more to get done, but we made our pitch today for this kind of like JV thing I'm doing with Trent over at Flowster. And I think that went well. And tomorrow I'll be releasing the SOP that I create, the SOP for the directory site build. I'll be releasing that to the mastermind members. So if anybody's interested in that, like when I say SOPs, some people still conflate the difference between an SOP and a checklist, because some people think that the checklist that you can get by going to the bar across the top of the page here and opting in for that, it's free. That's just a checklist. That is not an SOP. And so I hear that often, like, well, is this like your SOP? No, that's not an SOP. It's a checklist, hence the name Google Business Checklist. So an SOP is so much more than a checklist. It's full on training and step-by-step procedures on how to do everything, links to resources and tools and, all that kind of stuff. And so it's just an enormous amount of work developing SOPs, which is why most people don't do it, right? Because it's so tedious. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not like the new thing to do, but it's high leverage activity, right? In other words, once you develop an SOP, then you can now delegate work and have it, you can duplicate yourself by delegating that process to a subordinate or to a contractor, a virtual assistant, whatever. And I know it's like building an asset essentially. So it may not be fun, but once it's done, it allows you to be able to like lift so much work off of your own shoulders, because now you can delegate that and even duplicate it, right? Because you can hire more people than you can have more than one person doing that, executing those tasks. So the whole point of me telling you that is because I'm not done. I've still got some additional kind of supplementary SOPs that have to be created that I'm going to be working on for the next few days. But tomorrow I'm going to release the first two SOPs of that series for our mastermind members, excuse me. So even though our quarterly offer just went up $100 just tonight or at midnight last night or midnight this morning, I guess you should say, it's still a super value, guys. So if anybody's interested in that, now would be a good time to join and come get the SOPs. We have a quarterly offer, and I always say this, look, come join us for a quarter. You'll get all of your value for the money that you spend within a quarter for sure. And then it's up to you. If you think it was worth it, you can continue your subscription for another quarter. If not, then hey, see ya and best of luck to you. And seriously, we wish the best for you. But why not come check it out for a quarter and see what we've been talking about for all these months. See if it's really worth what we're charging when the price of admission is a steal for what it is that we're providing for sure.
Definitely. Well, that covered everything that I had, you guys. I just wanted to make sure people knew what's going on in the mastermind, the yacss webinar replay. That's right. Wanted to tell people POFU Live 2022 will be coming up soon. We're going to be starting pre-order or early bird tickets. So that will be definitely announced a little bit more as we get going. Should be ready in about a week or so. And that'll be a great deal. It'll probably be up to like 30% off for people who take advantage of the early bird tickets and grab them, which we like because one, it's a good value for you, and two, it helps us plan so we know, start getting a handle on ticket numbers and all that sort of jazz. So we'll be online, and we've got a lot of speakers lined up, got to confirm a lot of them, and we'll be announcing more of that as the summer goes on, but hopefully you'll be joining us. That'll be in late September, and we'll be online. So more details to follow there. All right, guys, anything else, or should we jump into it?
Let's, I guess, just get into it. Just one more thing I want to reiterate about the yacss webinar. Apparently, the founders discount coupons. So the coupon is Semantic Mastery. That ends. It was supposed to end at midnight this morning, but it apparently Jesper left it open for one more day. So I think you still have a few hours left. I would encourage you to, if you're going to, it's 30, I think it's 30% off. I think it's either 20 or 30% off, whatever the retail pricing is. And that's for the length of your subscription, however long you have it. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in it, check it out. It is super powerful. And I'm going to be hosting a bonus webinar on Monday, June 13th. So about 10 or 2 weeks from now, just about to kind of show how to push more power into it, topical relevance and that kind of stuff. So I encourage you guys to pick it up if you can. All right. With that said, let me grab the screen and we'll get into these questions. Seems like we've got quite a few already. All right. I think we answered Edward's last week, right? I think that was the last question we answered.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think he was asking about, does the battle plan help with e-commerce SEO? And I said, probably not. It's not something that we've done. We've not, I'm just not an e-commerce guy. I've never really had any desire to do that. So anyway, so Mike's up first. He says, hey guys, I recall Bradley saying iframe content counts towards keyword density and content to the page it's on. Does this still apply to content that has a no index on it, like a tag page or something similar? Well, yeah, having a no index doesn't change the composition of a page, if that makes sense. What I mean is, if you have a no index tag on a page, so you're like in the meta, like in the SEO plugin settings, if you're talking about a WordPress page, you can go into the advanced settings generally and tell it, like the meta robots information or whatever directives, to tell it to no index, no follow, no index, that kind of stuff, no archive, all of those. If you're talking about no indexing it, then no, it doesn't, Google's not going to index it. So it's not going to hurt anything, if that makes sense. No indexing, adding the no index tag to a page does not change the composition of the page. But what I'm saying is, why would you care? And this is a valid question, a sincere question. Why would you care about the keyword density of a page that's no indexed? And if you're on, Mike, and you have if you can clarify a little bit, there's probably something I'm missing with your question. Some additional context would help. I just don't understand. What I'm trying to say is, like, for example, if you are using something like an SEO tuning tool, right? So like Surfer SEO would be an example of that. And there's many of them, but let's just use that as an example. If you do a SERP analysis for a particular keyword, and it's going to pull up the top 20 results. And if you look through those results, you're going to get you're going to get like for local, and that's all I deal with is local. So if you're doing a local search query, SERP analysis in Surfer, for example, then it's going to show you the top 20 results, and it's going to show you the word counts, and it's going to give you their own proprietary authority score for each one of the sites and that kind of stuff. And what you'll notice is there will be mixed in local business sites as well as directory sites. Okay. And you'll notice like the directory sites like Yelp or Angie. I'm in the contractor space. So we see Yelp, Angie, Home Advisor, Lawn Starter, like sites like that. You're going to see that they have oftentimes, 3,000 plus words on the page. And that's a lot of times because it's endless scroll, right? Or it'll be, and then there'll be the authority score, the proprietary authority score, which will be real high. It'll be like 9 or 10 for something like a directory site. Then you'll see local business sites, and local business sites will have like, for the tree service industry, it'll be like 350 words or something like that generally. And the authority score is going to be like 0 or 1 or maybe 2 if it's an older site. And that's about it. But every now and then you'll see a local business site that'll have low authority score, but you'll see it'll say like 2,500 words or 3,000 words. And you'll be like, holy shit. And you go open up the page, and the page only has, really 300 or 400 words on it. But what it has is a carousel that's an embed of Google reviews or reviews from some other source, but generally they're Google reviews. So that's like from the Google business profile. So that's an embed. And what happens is it's actually counting that content on the page from the embedded reviews widget. That makes sense. So that counts towards the page content. And that also, here's the thing, and that's where like, again, the SERP analysis in Surfer, for example, if you don't turn off or tell it to ignore those results from directory sites, from local business sites that have those embedded reviews widgets that significantly increases word count on the page, then it ends up skewing what the competitive metrics are of what your content needs to be competitive, to compete. Does that make sense? Like, in other words, if you leave the directory sites with 3,000 plus words in the SERP analysis results that are telling you and giving you guidelines on what kind of content you need to produce to be competitive, then now it's now shot your word count way up, when in all reality, you're not really competing with Yelp and Angie and Home Advisor, right? Because those are directory sites. That's an apples to oranges comparison. You want to compare apples to apples, which means a local business site should be compared to other local business sites. You should ignore directory sites. But sometimes those local business sites will have something embedded that will like a reviews widget, for example. And if they have dozens or even hundreds of reviews, then all of a sudden their word count shot way the hell up. And because those typically people, like, again, in the tree service industry, a lot of times people will leave reviews and they'll mention the service. Like, Joe's Tree Service came out and did a great job trimming and pruning my trees, or trimming and doing stump removal on my property, whatever. So it might be a short snippet of text, like a sentence or two, like reviews typically are, but it'll have a keyword or two in it. And then that's duplicated for dozens or hundreds of times, however many reviews there are. If all of a sudden your keyword density goes through the roof. So my point in saying all of that is, like, those types of pages, that does count against keyword density. And in fact, that's sometimes why those pages rank, which goes against everything that we know as SEOs, right? You don't want to over optimize. You don't want too many keywords. Keyword density has been tested multiple times. The SEO Fight Club, Clint Butler and the guys, I know he's usually part of that, but like the guys over at the SEO Fight Club, they've tested that multiple times, and you can still have like way over optimized by what the traditional like rule of thumb metrics are for keyword density and rank. My point is, like, don't get too caught up in that. I still tend to try to keep my keyword density fairly low for any particular keyword, because we like to use a lot of variants of keywords, and that's more for the user so that it doesn't just read really spammy than it is for the SEO part of it. What I'm saying is there's been many tests done. Again, you guys go to the YouTube and look up SEO Fight Club, and you'll see they've done it multiple times where they've checked their channel. They do like single variable tests and stuff a lot over there. And you'll see that they've done it multiple times where like keyword density is not Like it can actually help you rank to be way over and above what people tell you is a general guideline for keyword density. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and spam your sites. That's not what I'm saying. But to get back to the question, why you say, does that still apply to content that has a no index on it, a no index directive? Yeah, it still counts. But my point is, Google's not going to index the page. What do you care? And again, maybe there's just some context missing, but why would you care about what the keyword density of the page is if it's no indexed, right? The only time that you really have to worry about that is if it's an index page, because then it can bring down the overall like quality score of the site itself for being over optimized. But as I just mentioned, that's been tested many, many times. And believe it or not, you can spam away and still rank. And in fact, sometimes that is the difference between what ranks and what doesn't, is having keyword density higher. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Mike. And again, I think I was just missing some context. Just to check to see if there was a follow-up on that before I move on to the next question. And I don't see one. All right, right on. Well, moving on. Hugo says, I have a client with a small number of GMBs or Google profiles for their national service area business. The main GMB for the head office is pretty established with reviews and lots of embeds over the years. Excuse me. Is it possible or a good idea to make some GMB posts from the main GMB cross-linking to boost the other GMBs? Is there a way to pass juice between GMBs? Thank you for all your great content you share. That's something I have never tested, Hugo. I swear I saw a post about that in one of the Facebook groups recently, where somebody was talking about doing that. And I don't remember whether they said it improved or hurt. I've never tested that, Hugo. So I'm not going to, it would be pure speculation if I was to try to, give you some sort of a guess, because I just have never tested that. You could test it and see if it does anything. You could always go. The point is, if you have access to the Google profile so that you can go in and delete the posts, then why not test it? In fact, go check out the Facebook group for GMB Crush. Mateo and his group I think that's the group where I saw a post about that recently, like within the last week. So if you go to Facebook and join the GMB Crush group, and just do a group search function and look for that, like cross post or cross link between GMBs or Google profiles or Google business, whatever, you probably find that post if that was the right location. I think that's where I saw it, where somebody else had tested that. I have not, so I don't know, but it if you wanted to test it, I don't think it could really hurt anything if you saw negative movement and you haven't been testing other things. That's the whole point with like single variable testing, is and that's hard for us in SEO guys, right? We typically apply multiple different methods or tactics to try to rank something. And unless you're testing variables in isolation, then how do you know which one it was or which combination it was that produced a negative or a positive result? Like, it doesn't matter which way it goes. What did it? What caused it to go up? What caused it to go down, or whatever, in whichever direction it moved? If you're applying multiple methods or tactics at one time, you don't really know what did what. And that's where single variable testing comes into play. And it's now in the real world, there's very rarely that single variable tactics are ever applied, because it's generally a combination of things. But that's where it makes sense to do single variable testing, to determine, okay, I did this one thing and I waited for 3 weeks and monitored what the changes were. Did it cause it to move up or cause it to move down, or no change at all, right? And then if you got one that, like, now you can, once you've identified certain variables that cause positive movement, for example, so you eliminate any of the negative movement tests, or methods, tactics, whatever you want to call them, and then you've only kept the positive ones. Now you start making combinations, which is how I developed my Google business, SOP, the method that is currently in the checklist. Although that's evolved, the link building component has evolved considerably. The checklist that we were just talking about earlier. But the SOP that I have in the mastermind, which all mastermind members have access to, that is, those are all kind of like methods that I tested through single variable testing across dozens of GMBs. And I only kept the ones that had positive movement, and then started combining them and monitoring those. And that's ultimately what ended up being all the on-page factors that you see in the Google business checklist. which is modules 1, 2, and 3. That's optimizing the Google profile, publishing the Google business website, and then optimizing it accordingly. And then the Google business posts, which I do push silos and mirror silos. There's 2 different types of silos that I do. Those are the 3 on-page factors. And all 3 of those it's still the same. That has not changed from a year ago when I developed that checklist. And that was from single variable testing across dozens of GMBs. Then it was the off-page factors that I moved to next, which is that has evolved. The checklist is a bit outdated. Not that those methods won't still work, but I've found better methods, which is what I teach in the mastermind. So anyway, go check it out, Mike. Or excuse me, Hugo. Go check it out, Hugo, and see in the Google Business Crush. The GMB Crush group is, I think, where I saw that. And then, like I said, you can always test and see if you identify any negative or positive movement. And if you see anything negative, you can go in and delete the post, provided that those are the only changes that you made. If you did other things at the same time, then you can't say, oh, it was cross-posting Google businesses that caused a, positive or negative movement if you're doing other things at the same time, right? So Calm, okay, says, hey, SM, I saw your webinar with Jesper. I have a service area business that provides national services and have location pages for all services across the whole country. Have location pages for all services across the whole country in individual counties. I have a branded drive stack, GMBs, press releases, etc., along with a branded ID page in S3. Would it damage the entity if I created one cloud site across all of Jesper's cloud integrations and a gsite per location page and link back to the main branded drive stack in the process? Wanting to drive as much power as possible to help rank all my pages as my industry is super competitive. That's, I don't know. Again, sometimes there's questions, guys, that are theory that cannot be answered. I could guess, but that, again, that was just a guess. You have to test these things to be able to determine, I've not done that, so I don't know. I got to read through this one more time. He says, I have a service area business that provides national services and have a location page for all services across the whole country and individual counties. I have a branded drive stack, GMBs, press releases, etc., along with a branded ID page in S3. Would it damage the entity if I created one cloud site across all Jespers cloud integrations and a gsite per location page and link back to the main branded drive stack in the process? I've never had any issues linking to a drive stack. And for anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, that's the drive folders and files in Google Drive that have been made public that we use for kind of developing links within the Google Drive system that can power up our money sites and whatever else. I've never seen any problem from linking to drive stack, meaning folders or files. I've never seen that cause any problems. So I can't imagine that hurting anything. As far as, I don't know specifically what kind of configuration you're talking about with Jesper's cloud, with doing the cloud pages. I think there's 5 integrations now, maybe 6. So I'm not sure what kind of configuration you're doing there, but as far as G sites, you can do, like, again, using Google sites to link to other Google sites or to drive stacks or to, anything like that is not going to hurt. I've never experienced any sort of negative, issue from that, period. The only, like personally, I've been using drive stacks and G sites with like a branded G site, and then you mirror like location pages and everything you mirror your site structure, your main money site structure into a branded G site. I know there is a lot of strategies out there, which is using additional G sites to kind of link to your main branded G site. So you have different G sites on different, G site web addresses, so sites.google.com/view/whatever slugs. That's not one that I've done much with, although I do need to test with that because I know some of the guys like over at StackSEO are doing a lot of that. I've always kind of stuck with building one branded G site, and then you build into that, like you expand that by adding additional location pages, and basically you mirror your main money site structure into that G site. And that I've always liked that best, because when as you're powering up the G site with link building and everything else, it builds massive authority. And so each time you add like a new location, for example, it benefits instantly from all the authority built to that specific G site. Whereas using multiple different G sites, each G site is like fresh. In other words, it doesn't have, you have to build authority to each subsequent G site. Whereas if you just build on to, like, expand an additional G site, it's going to benefit from the authority that's already been built to it, right? It has kind of like a cumulative effect. But again, that's not to say that using additional G sites as tiered link building isn't helpful. I just haven't tested that. That's not something I've done. And I suspect that it is useful because, like I said, I know some of the guys over at Staxio, that's what they teach. And so far, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but that's something that I've seen them do. I would like to test it some later time. I just don't have the time to do it right now. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's one of those kind of theory-based questions that I just don't know without testing. The one thing I can say for sure, Calm, is I've never experienced at all, ever, or seen at all any negatives from link building to a drive stack, or which means the folders and or files within the drive stack. I've never seen that cause an issue, or even heard about it causing an issue. So I'd say fire away. You can't hurt it. Joey says, hey guys, thanks for answering my question last week. I have a question about backlinks on Majestic. I bought an expired domain, and one of the backlinks, Majestic, says the date first index was January 2022. But when I visit the site that contains the backlink is from 2016, as this backlink was made 6 years ago, but Majestic only first indexed it 6 months ago. How do you know how old the backlinks are? That's a good question. If you look at Wayback Machine and you see that backlink was indeed present, I'm not sure why Majestic hadn't picked it up. And perhaps it was indexed and then was, for whatever reason, fell out of their index for some reason and then was re-indexed. I don't know how to answer that. That actually might be a good question to contact Majestic support about. Like, seriously, just ask them exactly what you just asked me. Like, hey, look, I'm analyzing a backlink that in Wayback Machine, so archive.org, shows that it's been live on that page for 6 years, but Majestic only shows it as first indexed on January 2022. Can you explain that? Or, you know what I mean? Like, Majestic, they should be able to provide an answer to that might solve that riddle, so to speak. You know what I mean? I don't know why it would say that. But if the archive machine, archive.org, the Wayback Machine, shows that that link has been present on that page for 6 years now, then I would say it's pretty safe to go ahead and pick up that domain. It's likely that backlink's not going to be removed from that page anytime soon if it's been there for 6 years. Does that make sense? So I would say go ahead and run with it. Okay. I try to look for, and guys, sometimes I'll make an exception, like for some of my own projects. For my link building clients, I don't like to make an exception. What I mean is when I'm looking at my filters that I use for my criteria for buying an expired domain is trust flow 10 plus, number one. It has to be in the appropriate topical trust flow category that I need it for whatever the intended target is. Then my default settings, it has to have a minimum of 5 referring domains. But sometimes I will make an exception for less than 5 referring domains if I can prove that the backlinks that are producing the trust flow, so the topical relevance, if they have been present for 2 years or longer. Like, in other words, if I can verify through the Wayback Machine that link has been on that page from the source domain that it's on for 2 years or longer. But for some of my own projects, I will make an exception, and that link may have been, maybe less than 2 years old, and I'll still use it for my own projects. But for client projects, I won't do that. Like for link building clients, if that makes sense, because I don't want to sell somebody a link that, if it's fairly new, then it's more likely that whoever placed that link, so the web owner, the webmaster, whatever, could I, find out that that link is no longer pointing to what it was originally supposed to point to, or what it was originally pointing to. Now it's something entirely different, right? And so that link could be removed, and I don't want that to happen. I want to reduce the chances of that happening for my link building clients who have paid for those links. But for like my agency clients, if I'm doing link building, which they're paying for results, not for links. So like, I might make exceptions in that case, or for like some of my own projects, because I want the benefit of that powerful link. But, I understand there may be a little bit of risk in the fact that it could be discovered by the webmaster and removed, right? And that's okay, because as long as you have, I don't want to sell links that way, but I can still use them, if that makes sense. So I will make exceptions, but it's just under certain conditions. Okay. I wanted to buy a domain with age backlinks, but I'm not sure if majestic date first index featured is supposed to be the backlink age. Again, that's a great question. I would just contact Majestic and ask them. Seriously, that would be a really good question to know the answer to. Paul says, hey, Bradley, for a tier 3 link, would it be better to have something like a trust flow 10 with perfect topical category, or a trust flow 30 with a more broad topical category? Are links always the best category regardless of what tier the link is being used? No, great question, Paul. That's a fantastic question, but no, that's not how I do it. At tier 3, you can go much broader as long as it's related by 3 degrees of separation, right? Like, in other words, like all of my link building that I do, we identify what the most appropriate topical trust flow category or categories are for tier 1. And that's what we try to build all of our tier 1 links in the most appropriate topical trust flow category or categories. Sometimes there's more than one. And then at tier 2, we can go broader. So for example, in Majestic, you understand, like, let's just use business as an example. Business has, and here, I'll pull this up. Yeah, we've got time. So I'm just going to pull up this. This is like an old diagram for whatever reason but I use this to kind of look at topical trust flow categories in Majestic. So this is business here. Okay. So business is the broad category. It's the top level, right? So there's business, there's society, arts, computers, reference. Those are all top level categories. So the inner rings here. Okay. But then there's all the subcategories, the more specific categories within the business top level category, right? So financial services, arts and entertainment, marketing and advertising, consumer goods and services, construction and maintenance. That's one that I use a lot for contractor stuff, right? So business/construction and maintenance. Okay. So what I'm saying is that let's just use, like, for a tree service site, for example, at tier 1, we are going to build links from business, construction and maintenance, or business, agriculture and forestry, or from home/gardening, right? So those are like the 3, and then to a lesser degree, there's science/agriculture, which is in here. That's more appropriate at tier 2. So what I'm saying is we have basically 3 main categories that we will build, our topical trust flow categories that we will build links at tier 1. So those are linking directly to the money site and the Google Business website and the Google Map. Okay. So again, business, agriculture and forestry, business, construction and maintenance, and in home/gardening. Those are the 3 most appropriate topical trust flow categories for tier 1 links for a tree service contractor. But at tier 2, we can go broader, right? So we could go to we could go to general business. So anything in the business category. Sometimes there's more specific subcategories that wouldn't make sense. But, like, for example, business real estate. Is that relevant to a tree service contractor? Of course it is, because maybe not directly at tier 1, but at tier 2 it is, because obviously, like, people that own real estate, whether it's commercial or residential real estate, are going to need tree services generally at some point, right? So it does make sense. It's a relevant category. I will use the broad just business category sometimes. Some of them, like business healthcare, that there's a subcategory. It's probably a much smaller slice, but right there, I just passed it. Right there is healthcare. Shit, it's hard to. Right there is healthcare. That is a subcategory that I probably wouldn't use even at tier 2, right? Because it's not really relevant. But the general business domains, if I can find domains, which you can, that are just in the general category, not one of the more specific subcategories, that would still be relevant at tier 2. As I said, science/agriculture would be relevant and even science/environment would be relevant at tier 2. Okay, does that make sense? Then at tier 3, like here's regional, right? These are regional links or topical trust flow category here. And you'll see, for example, there's North America. Well, I could use that at tier 3, right? If for US based or Canada based, Canadian based tree service contractors, it would make sense. There's one in here for Oceania, which would be like Australia, right? So like there's one for Europe. So if you're in the UK, you're doing stuff in the UK. Those are all like relevant links at tier 3. So to get back to your question, if you can get both, and I lost the page. I think this is it. If you can get both a trust flow 10 in the most appropriate topical trust flow category, use that for tier 1 to link directly to the money site. And then if you can get a trust flow 30 that is in a related category, just use logic, right? I mean, seriously, like it's as simple as that. Is there some sort of way that is relatable to where it makes sense? And then how relatable is it? The broader it is, so the less relatable it is, the less relevant it is, the further out in tiers is where you should use that. So at tier 3, you can be quite broad, and that's not an issue at all. Okay. That was a great question though. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. But I do everything in funnels like that, right? So at top of funnel would be like tier 3 links. And so they can be the broadest. And as you get closer towards the bottom of the funnel, they should be narrower and more relevant, right? So the closer you get to tier 0, the more relevant the link should be, if that makes sense. But that was a great question. Simon says, hi, I just watched your YouTube with Jesper and bought a plan on yacss, but I only have one client and I'm worried this tool is only for agencies. How many times can I apply this tool to one SEO client? And do I need to keep paying it monthly? I don't want to cause footprints or get penalties. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, if you've only got one client, you can use Cloud Stacks to power up other assets for the client besides just the money site or the Google business website or whatever. You could start to use it to power up tier 1 branded assets. So, you know, for example, like Blogger. By the way, guys, Blogger is so underutilized for SEO. I think it's just because it's not sexy. It's been around for everybody forever, but Blogger is a fantastic tier 1 asset to be used. It's a Google property, and it's just so underutilized in my opinion. Anyway, so if you have a branded Blogger account for that client, for example, you could do like a Cloud Stack to that, right? You could target different keywords and all kinds of stuff. But if you've only got one client, no, when you stop paying for yacss, it doesn't remove your cloud pages because your cloud pages are hosted on your cloud accounts, your cloud storage accounts. That's why you go through the process of getting your access keys and then adding them and integrating them with yacss and everything else. So once you publish sites to your cloud accounts, they're on your cloud accounts. Stopping paying yacss is not going to remove those sites from your cloud accounts. You have to go in and manually delete them after that, if that makes sense. But if you've only got one client, then, you know, my question is, why not go out and get more clients? You know what I mean? Like if you're understanding SEO, if you understand SEO and you're doing this kind of work and you're generating revenue from one client, why not do it for more than one client to make more money, or do it for some of your own assets, right? Build your own assets and apply the SEO methods, Cloud Stacks and such to your own assets that then you can monetize in various ways. But if you just have one client, and that's all you plan on ever having, and you've exhausted whatever you need the Cloud Stacks for, then there's really no need to keep paying for it. I'm not encouraging anybody to stop paying for yacss. I'm saying make it a tool that generates revenue, right? Use it in ways to generate revenue. That's the whole point. Buying tools for the sake of buying tools doesn't help anything. You should have the intent of making money from it, right? Earning money from it. So anyway, okay. Rami says, hey guys, I would like to know, is it possible to see the off page of a GMB? I can think of citations and a few other things, but not much. What I'm trying to do is rank for lower competition, lower volume keywords for some of my GMBs. And I would like to know how competitive some GMBs are for a specific keyword. I know we can see how much work your website has put in for a keyword, such as title tags, content, anchor text backlinks and the URL, but how do we find that for a GMB? Thanks. Well, I mean, yeah, you can. Here's the thing, like, let me, I don't know, let's just find a dummy thing. I'm just going to say plumber Culpeper VA. Okay. That's where I'm at. And look at that. It's an image in the ad. So we'll go with like this Dexter Wells Plumbing because they're in #1 position. So I'm just going to click on that to open that up. That's really interesting. They went from #1 in the Maps 3-pack to number 1, 2, 3, 4 in Maps. Do you guys see that? Wasn't just me, right? That was weird. Let me refresh the page again because now it's in #3. It was just in #1, wasn't it? That was strange as shit. Very strange. I swear to God, it was in #1 in the Maps pack just a second ago. Okay, well, let's look at Culpeper Home Services then. All right, that look, and it changed again. Now Roto-Rooter's in #1. That's freaking weird, man. So if you guys don't think Google is doing some weird shit right now, like right there's your proof. We just saw the positioning shift twice with 2 clicks. That's very interesting. Anyway, let's just go in here and we'll do this again. That's certainly weird. In the 3-pack, Culpeper Home Services was #1, and now anyway, whatever. We're going to go with Culpeper Home Services. So there's a few things that you can do, right? You can check on check the backlink. So let me pause the screen for a second, guys. I'm going to get into I've got 2 Majestic accounts now, one that does not have client data in it so that I can use it for training purposes. And then my main account that has client data in it. And I always have to, I got a second account just specifically so I can show stuff in Majestic without having, without revealing client projects. So stand by while I get logged in. Okay, sweet. I'm logged in. We still got 18 minutes, so we're good. All right. So there's a few things you can do, right? You can check the backlinks you can do all the on-page analysis for the website and the Google Business Assets, right? Which includes the citations that's off page, but you can also look to see, is there a Google Business website? So that's, subdomain.business.site. And there's a way that you can look for that. I'll show you that in just a minute. But you can also analyze the backlink profile of the website, of the Google Business website, if it's available, and also the Google Map. There's a few different versions of the Google Map URL that you could also look for backlinks. We could take a look at that too. But what I'm saying is, like, one thing I would want to do is go check this is the homepage URL, what I call the location landing page. Whoops, that's the wrong button. So we're looking at just the external backlinks pointing to this specific version of this URL. I talk about this in the mastermind, but this is not something that has to stay in the mastermind. Let me just show you what I mean. When we're looking at, this is a little bit of a tutorial here, guys. I hope you're all right with that. So what I'm going to show you here, guys, is when we're looking at Majestic, there's some different options. Like this is all the backlinks pointing, and we can get rid of that trailing slash. It's the same data. It doesn't count that trailing slash. So what we're looking at here is 47 referring domains are pointing to, and I don't know why it's being slow, but 47 referring domains are pointing to this specific URL. But it says right here, would you like to switch to the entire culpeperhomeservices.com domain? There are 696 external referring URLs. That's different from referring domains. I mainly look at referring domains. So what happens is if we change this to the root domain, watch that referring domain count. It goes from 42 or whatever it was to 192. That's a significant difference. Well, why is that? Well, because now we're looking at all the backlinks that are pointing to any page or post or subdomain of this domain. Does that make sense? That's why it's significantly higher. But even if we go back to just this is the ranking URL, or at least this is the URL that's associated with the Google Business profile. This is not really the whole picture for this particular URL. Why? Because there's 4 versions of that URL. For home pages, for pretty much for any, for home pages, there's usually 4 versions of the URL that all need to be analyzed. Why do I say that? Well, because there's HTTPS and HTTP, right? Then there's with www and without www. So you need to kind of like analyze all 4 versions of those URLs to get a true understanding of how many external backlinks are pointing to that one specific URL. Because all 4 of these versions of the URL all resolve to this current format. Does that make sense? So any backlinks that are pointing to any of these 4 versions of this URL are all going to be basically redirected or providing benefit to this specific form of the URL, which is what all 4 versions of these resolve to now. Does that make sense? So there's other ways, which I'm not going to teach here because this is supposed to be just kind of more of a conceptual overview of it. But there's ways to very quickly analyze all 4 versions of those URL. But just to show you what I mean, if I get rid of HTTPS, see that there's 18 referring domains pointing to that version of the URL. That wasn't accounted for in the previous version, right? Which is its current version. If we go to www, this is now without the SSL, two backlinks to that version. And now we'll add the S in, and we're going to analyze that. So I'm just kind of pointing this out as when you're trying to analyze competition, you have to take all of this stuff into account. So there's another 2 backlinks. So in total, we had 42 plus 18 plus 2 plus 2, right? So where are we at? Like 62, 64, whatever, somewhere around 60 backlinks to that particular URL, it just different versions of it. Does that make sense? So you have to analyze all of that. But then you also, like I said, you want to look at the actual root domain, because you have to also take into consideration that, remember, the homepage might have only had, let's just keep it simple, 40 referring domains. But remember, the homepage URL of a website is where like all links that are built to anywhere on the site are like, there's going to be link equity that flows through that page or post or subdomain that's going to flow up to the root domain. And that's generally because of like the navigation menu, there's a home button, or even if there's not a home button, there's usually a logo, and the logo is usually linked to the homepage URL. So there's always link equity bleeding from any page to the homepage, as long as there's an actual link, whether it's again, an image link from the logo or a navigation menu link or a contextual link. There's generally always a link from almost any page or post on a site, unless you intentionally design it to engineer it to not include that link. There's generally always a link to the homepage, right? And that means the homepage is going to accrue the most link equity of any other page on the site. And so because of that, you have to, whenever it's a homepage URL that's ranking for whatever search query it is that you're analyzing, you need to look at not only the 4 different versions of that particular URL, just to get an idea of like, okay, how many external backlinks are pointing to this ranking URL, but you also have to look at, and again, this is specifically for homepage URLs that are ranked. You also want to look at the root domain, because there is link equity flowing to the homepage URL from internal links that are receiving their link equity from external links that are pointing to those pages or posts. I don't know if that was clear as mud or what, but what I'm trying to say is you have to kind of zoom out. We always start looking at the external backlinks pointing to a particular URL, whatever that ranking URL is. Remember, Google doesn't rank websites, it ranks pages. Does that make sense? So we're looking at the page that's ranked for that, whatever search query it is. We always look at analyze the backlink, external backlink profile of that page first to identify what are the most competitive links to that specific page. What do we have to meet and exceed in our backlinks to be able to compete with that page? But then we have to zoom out. If it's a homepage URL that's ranking, we have to zoom out a bit and look at the root domain, because we are also competing with all the other links, no matter where they're pointing at the site, right? At pages, posts, or subdomains, right? And so but very quickly, and I know this is probably getting a little bit deeper than I typically would do in a Hump Day Hangout, but I do want to show you one other thing real quick, and then I'll get back to how we use this tool to also analyze Google business assets. Would be to go take a look at the backlinks and filter those down. So what I mean by that is this is showing there's 192 backlinks that's with this filter applied, which is only 1 backlink per referring domain. So just to keep it simple, we're going to just look at 1 backlink per referring domain. And this is saying across the entire site, it has 192 backlinks pointing to it. But if we take a look at the status, out of those 192, only 171 of those are currently live. So that means we eliminated however many that was, 19 or whatever it was that were dead links. I don't know why Majestic is being slow. But while it's trying to load, I don't know why it's being slow. Anyways, so now we're looking at 171 links. Okay, well, do we have to build 171 links to be competitive with this company? No, because now let's look at do follow, no follow. Now we've just eliminated. Now we've dropped it down to 119. We're only looking at do follow links, right? Because that's really, don't get me wrong, your no follow links are still have their place. They still do add value. But we're not looking at that because no follow links don't pass link equity. They also don't affect anchor text ratios. So if we analyze those, then we're actually skewing, especially if we're looking at anchor text ratios, we don't want to skew our data by also including no follow anchors because they don't count towards your anchor text ratio. So then the last thing is, okay, now, does this mean we have to build 119 links to be competitive? No, because if we go take a look at the trust flow, out of those 119 links, 110 of them are trust flow 0, which means they're insignificant links. There is a cumulative effect from that many trust flow 0 links. So there is some value combined from all of those links. But doesn't that just completely change the landscape of how competitive this company truly is for whatever search term it is, right? We just eliminated out of 119 backlinks, we just identified 110 of them are really non-competitive links, which means we're not competing with that at all. So really what we're left with is one trust flow 21 to 40, or one link that's in the range, the trust flow range of 21 to 40, or 8 links that are in the trust flow range 1 to 20. So we can further analyze those links by taking a look at specifically like the trust flow 1 to 20 range, which, by the way, there has to be trust flow of at least one or greater in order for it to have any topical relevance assigned to that trust flow. Like, in other words, trust flow 0 links have no topical relevance. There's no way that, like, Majestic does not apply a topical relevance score to or categorize the topical relevance of those backlinks if it has trust flow 0. It has to have 1 or greater before it has any sort of topical trust flow category assigned to it. So now we're looking at trust flow 1 to 20, and we're looking at these. This is a Culpeper Home Services. So now we're looking at, like, what are the topical categories of those backlinks, and are they relevant? And there's 2 ways the backlinks can be relevant, right? There's topical relevance and local relevance, geographic relevance. Links from non-relevant topical sources, but are relevant because of their geography, their proximity to the actual business. For local SEO, those are still valuable links. So it could be in a completely unrelated topical category, but if it's from a local business site, a local business directory, like a local chamber of commerce directory, a pizza parlor that is linking to Culpeper Home Services because Culpeper Home Services does handyman services, and perhaps they did something at the pizza parlor. So the pizza parlor did a thank you blog post on their site, and it links to Culpeper Home Services. That might seem like topically it's not relevant, so it's not a valuable link, but it is indeed valuable because it is a local pizza joint that linked to it. Does that make sense? Then there's topical relevant links. And so that's where, like, we can now analyze, there's only 8 results here that have trust flow values between 1 to 20. And let's look at those links and then determine which links are we truly competing with. Does that make sense? Business real estate is relevant. It's a relevant topical category for a handyman service, right? So business construction and maintenance that's probably the most relevant topical category for it. So you go through and you analyze those, but we can do, and I started to tell you guys all that so you can start to learn how to use this tool better, because this is where I'm telling you, man, topical relevance is where it's at with backlinks. That's what's producing the best results. And it makes sense, right? We're getting further into the semantic web. That said, you can also use this same sort of process to analyze backlinks to the Google business website if this location has that, right? So how do we do that? We would go just do a quick search, use a Boolean search, right? So you just do site : and you would say .business.site. And if it's indexed, it will show up. And then you would put Culpeper Home Services. And I'm going to put those in parentheses, Culpeper Home Services. And that's interesting. I don't know why this is not their Google business website, but somebody linked to their Google business website from this, or mentions Culpeper Home Services on this Google business website, whoever this is. So they're probably, yeah, Elkwood, that is a township within Culpeper County. So they've apparently, as I was just talking about, probably have a thank you post or something on here about Culpeper Home Services doing some sort of work. But what I'm saying is this business doesn't have a Google business website, or else it would have showed up right now, right? But if they did, then we could take their Google business website. This is not it, but we're just going to use this as an example, and we could go do a backlink analysis on that, right? We could just do analysis on that and say, okay, this one doesn't have any backlinks pointing to it. We could, the next thing would be go take a look at the map. So what I would do is go pop a knowledge panel for that. So I would say Culpeper Home Services. I know we're about to run out of time, guys. I'm sorry if I didn't answer all the questions, but I thought this was a good one. If we click into the map, there's a couple things that we could do. We could get the CID URL. This is the gather up extension. That's the CID URL, although sometimes this does return an incorrect CID URL. You have to always manually check it after you copy it. I don't know why that's the case, but once you copy, that's the gather up Chrome extension, in case anybody didn't know that. You pop a knowledge panel, click into Google Maps, and then you click the gather up Chrome extension, and it gives you the CID map URL. But go visit the URL to make sure that it is indeed the correct Google business profile, because for whatever reason, sometimes it gives you like a different GMB URL. And I don't know why that's the case, but it's only sometimes. But anyways, you come back over here and you can analyze that. Now, most people don't build, except for SEOs, most people don't build links to the CID URL. So my guess is, again, they probably don't have any SEOs working, or else there might have had some links built to this. This is showing no links built to it, but there's other versions, right? There's the share URL. So there's this URL. You could always, now that's a 302, so you're not pushing link equity into it, but it could still have links built to it. Wouldn't you want to know that, right? If you're trying to see what all your competitors are doing. So you can take a look at that and see, are there any links built to that share URL? And look at that. There's a couple. Well, there's many links, but from only 2 referring domains. Does that make sense? It looks like it's probably from a footer link on their website. It's most likely that's the case. My guess is they probably have a footer link down here right there that links to their Google map. And that is indeed, I don't know if you can see it in the bottom left corner, but that's the share URL right there. So you can start to look, besides citations, you can analyze on-page factors. And then you can also look at the Google business website. So that's the .business.site, backlink analysis on that, but also do on-page analysis to determine what they're doing on page. You can also look at the map itself, the different versions of the map URL. We just looked at 2 versions of it. You could also, and I've never actually done this, but you could actually take a look at that long URL and see if there's any links built to it that way, right? Those are all different things that you could do to determine, what else has been done besides their traditional citations and on-page factors. So that was my tutorial for the day. How'd I do? All right, let me see if I can answer any others really quickly. How do we find that for GMB? Okay, so hopefully you guys understood, like you just use a Boolean search. So site : put .business.site and then put the company name in parentheses. The way that it's listed in the Google business profile. And generally, if they have a Google business website published, you'll be able to find it that way. Okay. Oh, we're almost done anyways. Sweet. Okay, cool. Good timing then. Wise Local says, hey, Bradley, I've seen you talking about CTR bot traffic and you said not to use a high volume in the beginning. My question is, which way do you recommend we send the traffic? As send branded traffic plus main keyword, or main keyword only, or main keyworded traffic through Web 2s that link back to the CID and the website? Great question. Branded searches are by far the best. If there's only one thing that I could do with CTR manipulation, if I had to just choose one method for CTR manipulation, it would be brand search and clicks. Does that make sense? Branded search and clicks. And there's variations of brand, as you mentioned. You could do just brand name only. You could do a search for the domain, the branded domain. So in culpeperhomeservices.com, for example, you could do a search for culpeperhomeservices.com, and it's going to come up number 1. Well, it should come up number 1 in search, and click through to that. Or just search for Culpeper Home Services, the brand name, search and click that. Search and click what I call compound, right? So would be brand plus keyword, brand plus service, brand plus product, brand plus location. So brand plus city, brand plus near me. right? All of those are what I consider branded or navigational search queries. And again, if I had to choose only one way to use CTR, what would it be? Branded searches, no question. That's where I see most people make mistakes, is they always go for keyword stuff, and they way overdo it with volume. And that's what causes problems. And in fact, like that can be a negative ranking signal if it's completely unnatural, like way over volume and everything else. If you want to strengthen the entity, do branded searches. That is a great signal to Google, because that's telling Google that people know the brand and are seeking it out by name. And so you can actually improve SEO across the board with branded searches. But you don't want to overdo that either. You got to keep it natural and increase slowly until you start to rank. And at which point, when you start to rank, you don't need to increase CTR, because now you should be receiving organic clicks, which increases CTR naturally. Does that make sense? And if I could only choose two types of CTR, what would my second be? It would be sending referral traffic. Instead of any sort of searching clicks, which would be keyword search and then click through the results, it would be sending referral traffic through my most valuable tier 1 links. So again, if I could only choose two, if I could only choose one, it would be branded searching clicks and variations of brand. If I could choose two, then my second choice would be referral traffic through the most relevant tier 1 links. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And then the last question from Jim is, hey, SM, in your opinion, is there any benefit to embedding full drive stacks into spam blogs like Money Robot, Ranker Sites, etc.? Thanks for your time. I mean, there can be if it's relevant content. I don't do any kind of bulk spam anything anymore. I just found it to be, don't get me wrong, other people are still doing that and they're getting results. And perhaps I just wasn't doing enough of it. I prefer to use embedding those types of things into topically relevant domains that, or rebuilt sites, as I like to call them, is going to work really well with a hell of a lot less volume, because you could actually push topical relevance into the stack that way. If that makes sense. You can still brute force with spam, bulk spam links. You can still do it. I don't like to do it that way. I personally don't. I prefer all about topical relevance, which is why I use Majestic the way that I do. Everything I do with link building is about relevance factors now. Again, either topical relevance or local relevance, but it's easier to build topically relevant links than it is to get locally relevant links. So that's what I focus on. And so can you still get some benefit from that? Sure, you can, if you have relevant content and you do enough of it. I think you have to hit a certain threshold with bulk spam for it to be effective. And I don't know what that threshold is, because I just don't do it anymore. And I haven't for a long time. I stick with topically relevant link sources, which I manufacture those myself, is what I'm saying. So that was a good question too. Sorry about running over, guys. Thanks everybody for